Kevin is back. We've settled our differences. We've reconciled, and
Yeah.
now Force with Friends is back. I'm pretty sure you're the person who reported me and got my channel demonetized, but we have since made amends, and now we're
Oh
okay.
man.
So we're gonna talk
Yeah.
about our favorite Star Wars characters, animated, live action. I figure we should throw the movies in as well. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I guess so. It's a
Maybe so.
minor part of the Star Wars
Yeah.
universe, right?
The movies do play a bit of a role, so
A little bit.
it's kind of where we're going with this. Did you have a hard time like narrowing down your favorites?
It was super easy to do my favorite for the movie. It was super
Mm.
easy to do my favorite for the animated. I had a hard time with the live action. It kind of came down to two people, and one got a slight edge for specific reasons. So, but
Okay.
it was that one was hard for me. The live action.
My animated was easy. Again, we may overlap a bit on animated.
Yeah, I think
Good
so.
chance. Real good chance. I think there's one clear answer there. Then the movies was my hardest actually. Like live action, I didn't think was too hard, but the movies I thought was difficult to narrow down because I mean between the prequels and the originals, and even like you throw Kylo Ren in there, like there's like a lot of characters I really like.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
what we're gonna do, because it was more difficult maybe to narrow down from each of those genres. So shows, animated shows, movies, we're going to do our favorite hero and villain. And then if you want to say like who's your favorite between the two, whatever, that's fine. But that way, because sometimes it's hard to compare a hero and a villain because you
It
like them
is.
for
Yeah,
different reasons.
that's true.
Hopefully, you like them for different reasons.
Yeah.
Some people are sitting there going, you know what? Palpatine was right.
Yeah, he's a real relatable guy.
He's
He
kind
I
of
get
had
him.
things going. Oh
Oh
mercy.
man,
Okay,
that's funny.
so let's start with the show. You want to go hero or villain? I'll let you pick first.
Let's go villain first.
Okay, villain. So live action show villain. I'm gonna go, and now this we haven't seen a lot of them,
Yeah.
but we've seen enough of them. I'm going with Balin Skull. So interesting. I mean, who are our other options? Moff Gideon,
That's the thing. You think about
Thrawn's there.
Thrawn could be. Now Thrawn might end up being my favorite.
Long term, yeah.
But he kind of caught the tail end of Ahsoka. So
Right.
I mean, right now, I agree with you. Balin was like really the most super
Yeah.
interesting villain there was. You had Morgan Elsbeth, which was kind of a cool character, but I mean,
Right.
Balin just stole the show. So I don't think there's another live action bad guy that really compares with him.
No, Moff Gideon is the worst. Like I get it, he's supposed to be. I mean, he plays like the wrestling bad guy so well, like he cheats to win, and
Yeah.
he makes it to where you're supposed to hate him. And so I do. So maybe he does the best job at being a bad guy, but I like Balin the best. He's so interesting. I mean, anytime he was on screen, you're like, man, that scene wasn't long enough. Like I want a little bit more of him. He
Yeah.
blurs the lines so well where you're like, well, is he really that bad? And then, no, he is bad, but he makes you not sure if he's bad or not. And I like that. I mean, even Ray was saying, like the actor, he was saying like, I still don't think he's bad. And Dave Filoni was telling him, no, he
is.
he is bad. I know the character.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he's such a great foil to Ahsoka's uncertainty in that show because he is the picture of certainty in what he's doing and what he's following. And so it's such a great foil to her character throughout the show. And man, you just want to know what is it he's pursuing. Like he kind of alludes to it, but we never really find out what his goal was not ultimately to help Morgan Elsbeth or to help Thrawn, right? He had something bigger.
Yeah, they were the vehicle
he was following. So I mean, I'll give an honorable mention just because I loved him in Book of Boba Fett to Cad Bane.
That's fair.
But his live action date is brief, but I do love some Cad Bane. But no, Balin to me is the clear favorite for live action villain.
I don't. So I was kind of thinking through some of these for honorable mentions, and I could not come up with a live action honorable mention. Like the live action shows have been good, right? Like I enjoy them a lot. We watch them all the time. I suppose I forgot that Chimera existed, but he's a cool villain.
He is a cool villain.
Plagueis is technically in the Acolytes.
Technically,
you could say that, but
no,
that's
true. I do like Chimera. I just feel like I don't know enough about him to really put him beyond Baylan, though.
And guess what? You're not gonna.
Nope. No, you're not.
You're not gonna know more.
And I think Andor will be interesting because right now there's not really a villain, right? You have the Deirdre girl.
The Empire is they do a really good job of just saying like the Empire is the villain.
But I think Luthen's in a really interesting position to become an antagonist of sorts. Not necessarily a bad guy, but an antagonist. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes in season 2.
Could be. I mean, you think he makes? I mean, this is completely sidetracked. Do you think he makes it out of season 2?
No,
Luthen. I don't know.
I don't think so.
He can't make it.
I think his story ends the way he expects it to, which is in tragedy and ruin.
Yeah.
But on mission. So we'll see.
Yeah, that would be a good, fair way for him to go out. So that's our villain. We both agree on Baylan. Also, just really quick on Baylan in the first episode of Ahsoka, like we jump in, and the first thing we see is not Ahsoka or Thrawn or Anakin. Yeah. Baylan shows up and wrecks that New Republic ship. Him and Shin. They do. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he's I mean, he's, if nothing else, he's an intimidating character, right? I mean, so yeah.
Yeah. So moving to hero, start us off.
Live action hero. This is the one I had trouble with. This was my most difficult.
You say Anakin?
Wait, we're doing well. I don't know. I love Anakin, but he has such a brief.
Yeah, he's not mine either.
I can't count him. It's a tie right now with a very slight edge. So Din Djarin, Mando, right? Like he was our first foray into the Disney Plus TV shows, and he's such a great character, right? Like his initial arc, where he kind of goes from bounty hunter to caretaker, is such a great story. And it's continued so well in season 2. The tie, though, is with Cassian. I love Cassian's character, and I think right now he has the slight edge because I appreciate how his story ends. But when Mando's story comes to an end, that could bump him up too, right? Like his is still unfinished, and so I'll reserve judgment on that. But I just like the character of Cassian. I really like that he's just this guy in the galaxy who is getting swept up into things, but begins to see the value of what the people around him are doing.
Yeah.
And he, the portrayal by Diego Luna is so good. He plays such a really complex character. And so that's a little bit of a cheat because obviously his story ends in a movie. But I and a lot of these characters overlap. But right now, his, to me, if season 2 goes great, his is a really satisfying story to me.
Yeah.
Again, Mando may beat him out in the end, but right now, I just got to go with Cassian.
I was gonna say I never considered Cassian. I like Andor. It's not my favorite live action show. Again, it's likely the best live action show, but it's not my favorite. We've discussed that. But it is unique in that you know how a story ends. So like you can kind of see what they're going to build up to that fever pitch in Rogue One. So that is interesting. Also, we talk a lot about Adam Driver being the best Star Wars actor, but Diego Luna makes a good run at that too.
He does such a good job as that character.
I still think Adam Driver's the better actor, but I think
that's fair.
Diego Luna might be the second best Star Wars actor we have.
Might be.
Yeah. His interviews are very good too.
Yeah, because he clearly loves what he does. He's always so excited about it. He's fun to listen to.
Yeah. So mine kind of going with the chalk here. It's Mando. It's got to be Mando. I mean, fair.
I get it. Yeah.
I mean, even though season 3 wasn't incredible, like, wasn't his fault, like, he's still an interesting character. Took a little bit of a back seat, but you still get a little bit of a character arc for him, right? Like, he gets back into his little cult of Mandalore, and I mean, is sect a better way to phrase that?
Cult was a good
yeah
good choice.
I mean, they make fun of, like, Bo-Katan makes fun of it and stuff, and then and he kind of brings her along as well, right? Like,
they're
his
a little
devotion.
sketchy at times.
Yeah,
they're
devoted. As most cults are devoted. So yeah, it's interesting, and like that dynamic with him and Grogu's pretty good in season 3, but season 1, my goodness, you talk about just. I mean, you're not really sure about him, and you see that armor, pun intended, starting to crack. And so episode 3, he takes the child, but then goes back and gets him. And so then it really just builds up the rest of that season. He's kind of the swashbuckling hero, and it's pretty fun. Season 2, it takes a completely different turn. He's showing his face. It's like we were, so Ashley's been watching during the day, just turning on like Star Wars Disney Plus during the day because she's cleaning up. We're getting ready to move, so she's like getting a lot of things ready, and she'll just have it going. And so on lunch today, it was the season finale of season 2 of The Mandalorian. I mean, that's like a tearjerker when he lifts his helmet up, and that's so good. So, what do you think though? Do you think Din Djarin is as interesting of a character if Grogu's not there with him?
Huh. No.
There's no character development.
I mean, he's a cool bounty hunter at the start, right? I mean, there's no question that he's cool, right? That he's
bad.
He's got a swagger to him. Like he's a dangerous dude.
Yeah.
But he becomes a much more complex character with the introduction of this person that he has to watch after. So I think he's a cool character, and I think there's really cool ways you could use him, but I think a lot of the allure to his character comes from his interaction with Grogu. So I think that's a good point.
Do you think Mando makes it out of his own movie?
No. Well, I don't know. It's hard to know what this is. Is this an in-between to the next season, or is this in place of, like, I don't think he makes it out of his story, right?
He should.
I don't know if this is the end or not. But I think he goes out in a good way.
Iron Man,
So
so we'll
he
see, almost has to.
Yeah.
Pending an announcement of them saying like, oh, what's his name? Pedro Pascal has signed whatever for however so many seasons of Mando. I'm going into this movie under the assumption it's it for him. Who knows though? But
hey,
I think
as a Mandalorian, that's the way to go, right? Blaze of glory. And that's what he's been trying to get back to, right? Like he's trying to regain like this kind of spirit of being a Mandalorian. And so it would be so fitting for him to go out as a Mandalorian warrior in battle. So I like that ending for him.
Yeah, for sure. And he doesn't turn into a softie like Boba Fett. So, So yeah, that's it. That's it for our live action. I think live action was the most limited amount of choices we had of all these.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it made it kind of difficult. So let's move on into animated. So for animated, I'll say we start with the hero this time. You go first.
I mean, mine was very easy. It was Kanan.
Yeah,
Kanan's my favorite. I mean, I don't even think it's close.
Yeah.
Like I love Ahsoka. I think she's an awesome character. Her story is fantastic, right?
Right.
Ahsoka's story is great. I'm a big Ezra fan. Like I like Ezra's arc where he grows from this obnoxious, immature kid into a Jedi, right? But Kanan's story is just, I just love his character, right? Like this guy who, comes from Order 66, loses everything, very Star Wars fashion, right? Finds a family, kind of joins up. And then I just love his arc with Ezra, like the amount of doubt and just, he feels like he needs the Order, right? He feels like he needs people telling him how to do this thing. But in very very master apprentice fashion. We've seen a lot of stuff. Like he has what he needs to pass on. He just has to realize it. And so he's just got such a great arc as various roles within the Ghost Crew, right? But especially in that arc as a teacher and as a teacher to Ezra. And so, you know, obviously we're not going to sit here and talk about Jedi Knight. People are like, oh my gosh, these Rebel fans always talking about the Jedi Knight episode.
It's only the greatest episode of animated Star Wars, potentially the greatest episode of any Star Wars show ever made.
And one of the things I love about that episode is, so within a lot of the EU legend stuff, there was like these periods of time where certain Jedi would have these moments where, like very rare moments where they were like one with the Force, right? Like they were in the right place at the right time and just 100% connected to the will of the Force. Happens to Luke a few times. Jason Solo does it. There's a few other Jedi that do it. And to me, it feels like that in that moment for Kanan, that he has just found this place in the Force where he's supposed to be, doing the right thing at the right time and just 100% at peace with it. And so that's such a cool ending for a character who's been so doubtful of himself, to end it in like an ultimate place of certainty in what he's doing. So that's one of the reasons I love that ending so much.
Yeah, it's good. And also, like, even if you want to scale it back away from that episode, the other day we were watching, I say the other day, it's probably been like a month, but we were watching season 1 of Rebels. That's a really fast watch through, by the way. Like season 1 flies by. And when those last couple episodes, when the Inquisitors have him, you know, like in prison, but then also he fights the Grand Inquisitor, that's so good. Then you can jump ahead. Is it season 2 where they fight Maul, right? Like in the Twilight of the Apprentice episodes, he's around. So those are really good for him. That's where he goes blind, I guess, at the end of season 2. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
he does.
That's good. And then season 3, he really like that. His character really starts to hone in going forward there. So yeah, I mean, it's Kanan for me too. Obviously, like I don't. You could pick Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, just from the Clone Wars. That's, I guess, a Bad Batch. You know, Bad Batch has some compelling.
There's some great characters there. Yeah.
Hunter, very good. Tech, you could say Tech there too. What? Rex, you could say Rex. I mean, that's a great
Rex
character
awesome
as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's a situation like live action. We talked about how there just didn't feel like a lot of choices.
Yeah.
I don't. You know, Kanan's not my choice just because there's not a lot. There's a lot of really great characters in animation, and a lot that if they're your favorite, like I totally get why. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm with Kanan though as
Kanan
well.
Fan.
Very good as a whole picture of a character.
Yeah.
It does very, very well. They did not mess that one up, as they typically don't.
And he gets to be like a giant force wolf. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
What's the guy? What that one episode where it's like the big lion bull looking thing in Rebels? What's
the Bendu. That's
Bendu.
That's a cool interaction.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Those sequences are really neat. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, like you said, Ezra as well. Ezra's a good choice because what's the Yoda line in The Last Jedi? They are what we grow beyond, or something like that. Like saying, like what they pass on. And you can take that line and throw it over Rebels, and you just see Ezra becoming, like watching Kanan and becoming that. So that's really cool. The same with Luke and Obi-Wan. Like you see that with Obi-Wan passing it on to Luke. So yeah, I mean, very Star Warsy. For villain, for me, it was a lot easier to pick because not that there's not a lot of good animated villains. It's just, to me personally, one stands out amongst the rest because really your options, the Clone Wars, you have a few. You've got Dooku, Grievous, Maul, Savage. You could kind of view him, I guess, as good at times too, sort of.
Right.
But then you've got Thrawn. And I guess in the Bad Batch, what's that guy's name?
Hemlock.
Interesting, for sure.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
interesting. But for me,
You could
it's Darth
throw
Maul.
Inquisitors in there, Grand Inquisitor.
Well, Grand Inquisitor, that's true. He doesn't make it very long, though.
No, he doesn't. He
It's
really
cool,
doesn't.
though. That line at the very end, where he's like, some things, are scarier than death or something like that. There's better things to fear. But yeah, Darth Maul for me, because you can take his story from the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, that last season of Clone Wars. Well, first of all, he's not even supposed to be alive. Then he is alive. Then he's like just fueled by this rage. Very good bad guy. Then the last season of the Clone Wars, Ray Park comes back and does the motion capture for that duel. He ends up like he's almost not a bad guy in that last season. He still is, but he almost isn't, because the greater bad is Order 66, Sidious versus the Jedi.
Yeah, he kind of knows what's coming down the pipe, and there is some desire in him to make it stop, right?
Yeah, but only out of revenge. It's not even like it's
right.
Yeah, and his story has a nice wrap up in Rebels. He shows up in Rebels. He's tricking Ezra.
He has a really good
so you've got that going on.
Yeah.
Then you've got his story ending in Rebels on Tatooine, which very appropriate. He starts on Tatooine, essentially ends on Tatooine. So very, very cool way for Darth Maul's story to be wrapped up, because you're introduced in a movie and you think you're done in a movie, and then you get like hours more of him. So for me, it's Maul.
Yeah, one of the coolest things animation did for Maul is it takes this what was really just a cool character in the Phantom Menace, right?
Yeah.
A really cool, menacing, really evil. I mean, and they've talked about it in the interviews, like the appearance, everything about him was meant to read
like a demon,
evil, menacing, right?
Yeah.
And the animation really took that and really gave him a really compelling character, right? Like compelling story to who he was, who he becomes. And even at the end there where he dies at Obi-Wan's hands, like he's really just like a lot of other people in the galaxy, he's a victim of Palpatine, right?
Yep.
And he has that moment where he's like, is this it? Is this the chosen one? Because he wants vengeance, right? He's just as mad at Palpatine as he is Kenobi.
Yeah.
And so, man, what an arc animation gave to this character from the first movie, who really cool, really menacing, gets cut in half.
He was there to sell tickets.
But becomes such an awesome primary character through a lot of Clone Wars and then Rebels, like you said. Man, it's hard to argue that there's not that there is a better villain arc throughout the animation. It is so good.
Animated Star Wars really gives him some legs.
It does. Oh man, that's good. That's good.
It's good.
Yeah, man, that was.
So is yours Maul?
It's hard for me to think that it's not Maul. Now I will also throw out it's a brief character, but one that I thought was really interesting, and that was Pong Krell.
Yeah, I don't like him so much.
I don't either, but he's a great villain.
Right? Yeah, like, he's a jerk.
It's really interesting to see on the side of the Republic this guy who is arguably more evil than some of the people on the other side of things, right?
He's more evil than Dooku, probably.
Yeah, I would agree, right? Like he is just sadistic and messed up. So from a pure villain standpoint, he's a really hateable character.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that's more of an honorable mention of just somebody who's really, really villainous. But man, Pong Krell, he's a bad dude. And he's cool fighting with the dual double bladed lightsabers.
He is cool.
That's pretty awesome.
He's a big guy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw his name in the mix, but
alien, whatever. As far as honorable mentions for me, for villain, Thrawn really makes you mad.
Yeah,
there
Thrawn's good
at the end. I mean, he's got a lot of layers behind him before you even get to him there.
Thrawn benefits from feeling like a character that a lot of people already knew.
He is, yeah.
Because he feels very much the same as the literary counterpart that we had before. And so that was a really good entrance for him to come in and kind of meet those expectations of what people thought Thrawn was and what he was like. So I think they did a great job with that.
I agree. Yeah. I think outside of that, there's not. Personally, I don't think there's as much there to
Ball's
discuss. Great. So let's get into movies. Movies is hard for me. It was really hard.
Yeah.
So, do you want hero or villain first? Do you want to end on a high note or another high?
Let's end on our hero. Let's take it off with villain. Yeah.
So villain for the movies. It's a toss up between two. Probably not as much of a toss up as we say it's a toss up. I mean, it's Vader, right? It's got to be Vader. But so here's my one reservation there. He's really bad, but only in one movie is he not actually cracking. If that makes sense.
That's true. Yeah.
Only in A New Hope is he actually bad the whole time. In The Empire Strikes Back, he's still bad, but you start to see the armor kind of crumble a little bit with Luke. It's still bad intentions, I believe, but but less bad than Episode 4. So that was my one argument there, because with Palpatine, I mean, Palpatine's the other choice for me. With Palpatine,
straight evil.
9 straight movies of
that's
bad,
true.
Just terrible, bad.
That's a fair point right there. Yeah,
but
there is at no point where you're like thinking that there's any possibility that Palpatine might turn the corner and change sides. Like he's pretty fixed as a villain.
Well, I mean, his character even is so blinded by the rage, whatever, they write him into being, that he electrocutes himself 3 times. He can't quit doing it. It's just, there's no growth for him. He's the same. Yeah, he's bad, and bad the whole way. But
no growth.
I mean, pulling all the strings. Man. Everyone loves to hate on the politician, right? It's an easy way to put this evil dictator in charge. Seemingly, just an average guy, and then he turns out to be horrible. So it's an interesting story, but I think you gotta go with Vader, even though he doesn't even round out his story as the villain, because he doesn't start his story as the villain.
I agree 100% with everything you just said. When I think about Palpatine, and especially Ian McDiarmid's portrayal of really developing such an to where from Phantom Menace to Revenge of the Sith, he really has developed through deceit and just through little things, right? Just this really villainous character, and you see that character continue beyond Revenge of the Sith as the Emperor. So I'd argue, just as a villain and as a character, he's so interesting and so well developed in terms of just the plotting and the scheming. But man, Vader, right? He's such a cool character. He's so intimidating. He's so imposing, and he's what you remember, right? When you watched the original trilogy, right? Palpatine, he certainly has a presence, but it's Vader that you remember so distinctly, right? In A New Hope and then in Empire Strikes Back, just the imposing, commanding figure of Darth Vader. It's hard to move past that. Now, he did some pretty awful things at the end of prequels, right? So we got that. And he's pretty terrible in A New Hope. Kills Obi-Wan pretty ruthlessly.
Cuts him down.
Yeah, without hesitation. But
I just Googled the top 3 movie villains of all, or the top movie villains of all time. Guess where Vader ranks?
How much of my bias do I put in there? Number 2.
3. I was thinking 1. So Hannibal.
Yeah,
Lecter
I mean, I was too, but I was like, of course I think he's.
You had to give him 1. So it's Hannibal Lecter, Norman Bates, Darth Vader.
Okay, that's fair. That's pretty good.
He only falls behind serial killers or whatever, so, a cannibal and a deranged guy. So,
which I guess is fair, because neither of them have redemptive arcs. So
both of them are also in horror movies.
Yeah, that's true.
Darth Vader shows up in a fantasy and turns out to be the greatest
sci-fi
film.
adventure.
So, again,
fantasy. That's true.
I think that probably bumps him up to 1 there, because he wasn't even allowed to be as bad as he could have been.
That's true. No,
So yeah,
there's something that's just so iconic about the character and the portrayal and the suit, the breathing, right? Like just
menacing.
everything about the character is so iconic and just sticks with you.
It's huge.
And I mean, it's not even talk about how great his story is, right? Like he has a great story as a villain. Villains, you know, he has that redemptive arc, which makes him really interesting, and where he started makes him really interesting. But like, even if you're just talking about visually and just the character on screen, it's hard to get past how cool of a villain it is.
When I think about like the best villain scene for Vader, like you've got obviously you've got in A New Hope, like he cuts down Obi-Wan, but also I mean he's there blowing up Alderaan, like he's in the mix on it, you know.
Yeah.
He's definitely not innocent in that. We get a little more layers to that in Rogue One though. But the greatest villain scene for Vader, and for me it's not the Rogue One hallway scene, although it's super cool. It's on Cloud City when he's fighting Luke, and you know where Luke is just kind of walking through and it's really quiet during their duel, and then Vader jumps out, like you don't hear him breathing or anything, and then all of a sudden you do, and he jumps out and he's just going nuts and then cuts Luke's hand off like they go out onto that bridge. That's the most intimidating Vader for me, because he's just kind of toying with Luke that whole time, and then he jumps out from behind that corner and it's like a game over at that point. I think that's so cool.
That is a good thing, because he just turns it on, like he's like, all right,
scares you too,
little boy, like you've done well. He gives him props. He's like, you know, you've gotten better, you've learned a lot, but like you don't know anything. And then because most of it's just hurling objects at him, right, on that platform.
He just sits there and he's
smashing him with heavy objects, like just relentless brutality.
But he also holds back. Like he could have just ended Luke as well.
He probably could have just pushed him off of there if he wanted
at
to.
Any given time. Also, like just at any point of that. But it's got to be Vader. So that's the villain. And really, again, there was only like probably 2 to choose from. But go into heroes. There's quite a few to choose from.
There's a lot.
Who did you land on?
Listen, characters I love. I mean, I love Qui-Gon. He's a cool character. Obi-Wan is one of my favorite characters from the prequels. Mm-hmm. He might be my favorite character from the prequels. But, you know, I'm a big original trilogy guy. And as much as I love Luke Skywalker and just the hero that he is, man, growing up, it was always just Han Solo. Like, this was an easy answer for me. Something about Han Solo has just always grabbed me and just been like, this is a cool guy. And obviously you could talk all about the story of, like, you know, the smuggler to hero to, you know, wins the princess over, all that stuff, right? Like the typical kind of story you'd expect for a character like that. But it was just the little things, like just the snarkiness and the wit, the unwillingness to back down, but also the slight stupidity in some of it. Growing up, one of my favorite scenes was just, you know, when they're trying to rescue the princess and he gets on that comm link and starts talking to the stormtroopers, and he just overestimates his ability to handle that. And so he just shoots it, right? Like he gets to the point where he's like, I couldn't handle this the way I thought. I'm just going to shoot it. And that's such a Han Solo thing, right? Like, I'm going to try to work through this, but ultimately I'm just going to end up shooting it in the end. So
I was thinking, like, who are you calling scruffy headed?
No, he's got some of the greatest lines in Star Wars. But man, no, I love Han Solo. I think he is by far, we talked about it a few weeks ago, by far the best used legacy character in the sequels. I love his character in The Force Awakens and how they bring him back in Rise of Skywalker. But man, Han Solo for me has just always been the guy. I love just the charm and the wit, but also the brashness and, you know, kind of the dumb aspects of being so bullheaded. I just
he's
love
not a
character.
Jedi by any by any stretch.
No, he gets a little sidelined in Return of the Jedi, right? Like he's not quite at the forefront anymore. But even still, he's just got his presence on screen, his interaction with everybody. I was always I just loved his character. And that just kind of stuck with me growing up. So
it's hard to go again. I mean, honestly, when you're looking at Star Wars movies, if you're picking any of like the big characters, it's hard to say that anyone is wrong about any one of the characters because they are so iconic. So I had three that I had to choose between. And I have a hard time because they wrap up the story so well. So
that's fair.
You've got Luke, obviously. So I mean, the original great Star Wars hero. So his story, I mean, if you just said 3 through 6 or 4 through 6, you've got a nobody becoming a somebody, finding his place, the whole coming of age, all of that. Classic story, very 80s movie themed, right? Like that's how a lot of that went. And so there's Luke, but then even if you go into the sequels with Luke, a lot of hate there, right? A lot of maybe things, the way they went about things weren't what we thought was going to happen.
Fair.
To say that diplomatically. But I think even if you look at Luke, like at the end, at his end in episode 8, like at the very end of the movie, it kind of mirrors episode 6, like where it mirrors episodes 4 and 6. So he stalls like Obi-Wan. So he's becoming, what he saw his master do. But at the same time, he wins again without even swinging a saber, right? That's how he ultimately wins in episode 6. He's not slicing and dicing someone. He's being sacrificial, which is what he had done in episode 6, true to the character, right? Like he was willing to get electrocuted by the Emperor. Just that's how things were going to go down. He was okay with it. And so he's willing to do his weird little force projection thing and that be all that he has. And the heart behind it is there, right? Like whether you like how it went or not, the heart behind it's there. Even in episode 9, you see him kind of coming from that episode 5 failure where he does lift the X-Wing out, things like that. So, I can respect a lot of the full circle moments we get with Luke. Another one that I considered was Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, what a character. His entire existence is just loss after loss after loss.
It really
after
is.
loss. Like it never ends. And so you just see this guy who really is just like a rule book guy. Like he does everything right by the book and things never go right by him. And so it's like, I feel like people can relate to that. Like, oh, you just try as hard as you can, but everything just unravels anyways. And you just have to keep going. That's what he does. And Kenobi, the series, not an incredible series, but we do kind of see him on that march to the original trilogy, which is cool. In the original trilogy, he stays very involved even after his end, right? Like his Force Ghost shows up here and there. And even in the sequels, you hear him telling Rey, like, oh, these are your first steps. Like he's still assuming that role of kind of keeping everybody in the loop of what's going on. Because that's what he does in 5 and 6. He's always like the clarifying, omniscient being that has to tell everybody what's going on. And in episode 7, he's doing the same thing. He's like, hey, Rey, these are your first steps. He's still out there trying to beat Palpatine. Yeah. So I think that's cool. But ultimately, it's Anakin. Anakin's got to be the hero.
I had a feeling it was.
So, I mean, a prequel kid. I mean, I grew up, Anakin Skywalker was my hero. The lightsaber duels were cooler than the originals as a kid growing up. They're cooler than the originals now. I mean, not that anything's wrong with the original lightsaber duels. It's just, I mean, prequel duels are better. They're the best lightsaber duels of any Star Wars.
Yep.
But you got Anakin. You got to go with him because you see like this long story too. His is a 6-movie arc. So you've got, he's the pretty cool war hero. Then he turns bad. Then he stays bad for a while. Pretty bad. It's kind of bad. Then he turns good again. I mean, how cool is that? He gets the final say. He gets to be the chosen one. So, I mean, you even hear his voice at the end of episode 9. A little homage to the main character of Star Wars there.
I would like to point out that your movie villain and hero are the same person.
Yeah, that's true. Ironic.
No, it's man, how, I mean, gosh, props to George Lucas for taking the Darth Vader character, right, and really creating a story that by the end of the prequels, you're just heartbroken for this character, and you're heartbroken for what he becomes. Like, even though at that point, if you've seen the original trilogy, you know that there's redemption in that, but it doesn't change how sad Anakin Skywalker's story is.
Yeah.
And man, as much as George Lucas should have gotten some help writing dialogue, goodness, that story of Anakin Skywalker is just so well told. And it leads so perfectly into this character of Darth Vader that we have in the original trilogy. So
you see why he's so mad.
I mean, he's yeah. You understand why he's not a nice guy there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's got a great story. And you talked about Luke Skywalker. I would say Luke Skywalker's, from like the conquering hero perspective, he's probably my favorite, right? Yeah. Story of like the hero who prevails.
In unorthodox ways as well.
Yeah, no, Luke Skywalker's such a great character, and the resolution in Return of the Jedi. I mean, we've talked about it. We talked about our favorite scenes. I mean, that is my favorite scene, probably in all of Star Wars. Is that moment where he throws down his saber and protects his father. I mean, that's so good.
That's good
but
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, there's not really any bad choices when it comes to these characters. They're just kind of these larger than life legends of the Star Wars lore, right? And they are that for a reason. So
right.
Yeah.
Do you have any honorable mentions like that? I mean, I feel like we can't not say Leia.
I love Leia's character. She's such a breath of fresh air throughout the trilogy, right? Like her butting heads with Han is some of my favorite stuff, because
she has to keep them all in line.
She's so sick of him, right? Yeah. Like, and she thinks Luke is just like dumb sometimes, right? Like she is like, she's stuck with these two guys who just are obnoxious and difficult and hot-headed, and and she has to be the voice of reason constantly. So
even like episode 4, once they rescue her, like, she doesn't need rescued from them much after getting out of the cell. Like, she's kind of got things figured out.
Oh gosh, the attitude. It's like, this Wookiee's done nothing to her, and she's like, get this walking carpet out of my way, right? Like, I imagine Chewie's like, what did I do?
I don't even know you.
Like, you have a problem with Wookiees? Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, just that, the pure attitude you get from Leia is fantastic. It really drives her character home in just the best way. So
The Last Jedi Leia is great too.
Yeah, I agree.
There's not other aspects of that movie are not great, but The Last Jedi, when she's conscious and not floating through space like Mary Poppins, she's great. Like at the end, like the lesson she's having to teach Poe Dameron the whole time, like it, and it shows that she led this rebellion. Like, she knows how this works, and so I just think the sequels don't necessarily do her character wrong either. Like, you kind of see this battle hardened leader. They really, they really do a great job writing it, and she does a great job of just portraying, like you said, just kind of this hardened character who's been there before, right? Like, she is comfortable taking command. She's comfortable putting Poe in his place, because she knows better. She's been there. She really feels like this veteran, experienced person within those movies. So the complaints are there, but when she's on screen and talking, it's great. When you mentioned Qui-Gon already, great character. So
love Qui-Gon.
There's not a lot of bad ways that you could have went about picking your favorite Star Wars characters. That's the best thing about Star Wars. There's so much content out there that there are just so many characters you can choose from.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's favorite character is Dexter Jetster, right? Like, I'm sure somebody
he runs the Galactic Waffle House. I mean,
it is the Galactic Waffle House.
You gotta love it. He just happens to also know about.
He is right. Like, how does this guy know about Kaminoan technology? Right. Like,
that's the thing, though, because if you go to Waffle House late enough at night,
some people there that know some things.
You'll learn some stuff. So
give me a Tales of Galactic Diner, right? Where it's just Dex and his adventures.
Yeah. So
I'd watch
that's
that.
our favorite characters. Comments, we're interested to hear all of your favorite characters, as always. Drop those below.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, we haven't discussed this yet, and maybe this isn't something we discuss in the next 90 seconds before we quit, but what are we going to talk about next week? Are you going to be on the show next week? Is that the plan?
That depends on whether we have another argument or not.
Oh, no? Okay, well, tentatively, you'll be here.
Finally, Will conceded that 3PO could beat Jar Jar in a fist fight. So we're on good terms now.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from.
Not if Jar Jar uses his tongue.
Let's see. No, he remembers Qui-Gon's lesson. He hasn't done that ever since. Ever since. I don't know. Do you want to talk about the Lego? To rebuild the galaxy?
Yeah, let's do it. I have to watch it, but yeah, let's do it.
I'm midway through watching it. It's just been really busy. I haven't had a chance, but I haven't had a chance. It's funny. I've been really enjoying it. It's a very unserious, enjoyable romp through the Star Wars universe so far. So I'm loving it.
Let's do it. So next week, Lego Rebuild the Galaxy talk. That should be fun. So that will make me watch it as well. So
there you go.
Thanks again for watching. Make sure to be here next week. And if you haven't watched Lego yet, like I haven't, you got a week to watch it. So get on board, and we'll see y'all next week.